Everyone thought she was perfect. Elegant. Soft-spoken. Devoted. The kind of woman you trust alone with your mother. But behind closed doors, when the house went silent, and the cameras stopped watching, she became something else entirely. Because while her fiancé built an empire outside those walls, his mother was being broken inside them. Slowly. Quietly. Deliberately. And no one noticed. No one. Except the maid they never looked at twice. This is the story of how love blinded a son. How cruelty hid behind a smile. And how the smallest voice in the room became the one that shattered everything. The mansion sat high above the city, wrapped in glass, steel, and silence. From the outside, it looked untouchable. A symbol of power. Of success. Of a man who had clawed his way to the top and left nothing to chance. Inside lived Kang Minit-jae, a name that carried weight in boardrooms and fear in back alleys. To the public, he was a respected businessman. To those who knew the truth, he was something far more dangerous. But none of that mattered here. Because in this house, Minit-jae was just a son. Every morning, before the city fully woke, he stood in the private kitchen pouring tea for one person only, his mother. Madame Kang. Once fierce. Once sharp-eyed and commanding. The woman who had raised him alone after his father's mysterious death. The woman who taught him silence before violence. Strategy before emotion. Age had bent her spine and slowed her steps, but her presence still filled a room. Or at least, it used to. Lately, something was different. Minit-jae noticed it in fragments. A hesitation before she spoke. A tremble in her hands when she lifted her cup. The way her eyes drifted to the floor whenever Yoon Se-rin entered the room. Se-rin was everything people admired. Beautiful in a controlled, polished way. Her smiles were precise. Her voice gentle. Her manners flawless. She dressed like a future queen, neutral tones, elegant lines, never a hair out of place. The press adored her. Investors trusted her. Friends envied her. She was Minit-jae's fiancée. And soon, she would be his wife. She made a show of caring for Madame Kang, adjusting pillows, offering medicine, asking soft questions in front of others. "Mother, are you comfortable?" she would say, fingers light on the older woman's arm. Madame Kang always nodded. Always. Too quickly. Minit-jae told himself he was imagining things. His mother was aging. That was all. Weakness was natural. Time did this to everyone. Besides, Se-rin had given up everything to be here. Her own family. Her privacy. Her freedom. Why would she ever hurt the woman who stood between her and nothing but power? The house staff came and went quietly, trained to disappear. Among them was Hannah. She was young. Early 20s. Slim, careful in her movements. She wore the same grey uniform every day and kept her hair tied back so tightly it pulled at her scalp. Hannah spoke only when spoken to. She cleaned. She served. She observed. And unlike everyone else in that house, she listened. She was assigned to the West Wing, Madame Kang's rooms. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Madame Kang barely spoke to her, only nodded when Hannah brought meals or changed linens. But Hannah noticed the untouched food. The medicine cups still full. The way Madame Kang flinched at sudden sounds. Then came the bruises. Small at first. Yellowing marks along the wrist, hidden beneath long sleeves. Faint discoloration at the collarbone. Hannah told herself it was fragile skin. Accidents. Falls. Until the night she heard the crying. It was past midnight. The mansion was asleep. Security lights cast long shadows down the hallway as Hannah carried fresh towels toward the West Wing. She froze when she heard a sound behind the door. Not loud. Muffled. A broken, shaking breath. Hannah leaned closer, heart pounding. Inside, a voice hissed, low and sharp. "You will sit straight when guests are here." A pause. Then another voice. Older. Weak. I'm sorry." Hannah's hands trembled. The door opened suddenly. Se-rin stood there. Her smile was gone. For just a second, her eyes were cold. Calculating. Dangerous. "What are you doing here?" she asked softly. Hannah bowed immediately. I was bringing towels, miss. Sarin looked at her for a long moment. Then smiled again. Be careful not to wander at night, she said. This house can be confusing. The door closed. Hannah stood there long after, her chest tight, her mind racing. The next morning, Madame Kang wore a scarf despite the heat. Minute J didn't notice. He was preparing for a major merger. Enemies were circling. Meetings stacked on meetings. His phone never stopped ringing. Sarin stood beside him, supportive, calm, reassuring. I'll take care of mother, she said, squeezing his hand. You focus on work. And he believed her. That afternoon, Hannah helped Madame Kang bathe. As she gently lifted the woman's sleeve, she saw it clearly this time. Finger-shaped bruises. Fresh. Madame Kang noticed Hannah staring and whispered, barely audible, please, don't tell. Hannah swallowed hard. Why? She asked before she could stop herself. The old woman's eyes filled with fear. Because he won't believe you, Madame Kang said. And she will make it worse. Hannah understood then. This wasn't neglect. This was control. And it was only beginning. Hannah did not sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the bruises again. Heard the way Madame Kang's voice had cracked, not from pain, but from fear. Fear sharpened by certainty. Fear that knew exactly who held the power in that house. By morning, the mansion was alive again. Sunlight spilled through glass walls. Staff moved like clockwork. Laughter drifted in from the breakfast room where Sarin entertained guests with effortless charm. Nothing looked wrong. That was the most terrifying part. Hannah brought breakfast to Madame Kang's room herself. The tray shook slightly in her hands. Madame Kang sat near the window, staring out at the city below. Her posture was stiff, as if movement itself might invite punishment. You shouldn't have spoken last night, Madame Kang whispered without turning. Hannah froze. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It's dangerous, the old woman said. Not just for me. For you. Hannah placed the tray down carefully. She's hurting you, she said, quietly but firmly. I saw it. Madame Kang closed her eyes. For years, she murmured. First small things. Words. Isolation. Then, when she realized Minute J trusted her completely, her voice trailed off. Hannah's chest tightened. Why don't you tell your son? A sad smile touched the old woman's lips. Because she made sure he wouldn't listen. Later that day, Hannah saw exactly what she meant. Sarin arranged an afternoon tea with Minute J in the garden. Madame Kang was seated between them, stiff and silent. Whenever she tried to speak, Sarin interrupted gently, correcting her, laughing it off. Mother gets confused sometimes, Sarin said lightly. The doctor warned us. Minute J frowned. Is that true? Madame Kang hesitated. Sarin's hand tightened on her arm. Yes, Madame Kang said finally. The disappointment in Minute J's eyes cut deeper than any bruise. Hannah watched from a distance, helpless, as the truth was rewritten in real time. That evening, Sarin called Hannah into her private sitting room. The door closed softly behind them. You've been spending a lot of time with mother, Sarin said, pouring tea. Her tone was calm. Pleasant. Is everything all right? Hannah bowed. Yes, miss. Sarin studied her like a chessboard. This house rewards loyalty, she said. But it punishes curiosity. Hannah felt the warning settle into her bones. You're young, Sarin continued. You don't want trouble attached to your name. A single accusation can ruin a future. She smiled again. You understand, don't you? Yes, Hannah said. But something had shifted. Because now Hannah knew, Sarin was aware. Fully aware. And unafraid. That night, Hannah noticed the West Wing cameras had been redirected. The hallway outside Madame Kang's room went dark for exactly 11 minutes. 11 minutes where anything could happen. When the cameras came back online, Hannah found Madame Kang on the floor. Alive. Barely. Her lip was split. Her breathing shallow. Her eyes unfocused. She fell, Sarin said calmly when Minute J arrived, alarmed. The doctor said her balance is worsening. Minute J knelt beside his mother, guilt flickering across his face. "I should have been here," he muttered. Seorin wrapped an arm around him. "You're under so much pressure. This isn't your fault." Hannah watched from the doorway, fists clenched. That night, as Madame Kang slept under medication, Hannah made a decision. She began to document everything. Times. Dates. Camera outages. Bruises. Missed meals. Changes in medication. Words overheard. Threats disguised as kindness. She hid notes inside the lining of her uniform shoes. Took photos with an old phone she never used near the house Wi-Fi. Every entry made her heart race faster. Every entry made her more afraid. Because Seorin was escalating. The next day, Hannah arrived to find Madame Kang locked in her room. "Doctor's orders," Seorin said. "She needs isolation." Hannah protested gently. Seorin's eyes hardened. "You are replaceable," she said quietly. "Remember that." That evening, Minute J announced his engagement party would be moved up. A public celebration. Press. Investors. Powerful allies. Seorin's victory lap. And Hannah realized something chilling. If the wedding happened, Madame Kang would not survive it. The abuse wasn't impulsive. It was strategic. Seorin wasn't trying to hurt the old woman. She was trying to erase her. And Hannah, just a maid with no power, no name, no protection, was the only one who saw it happening in real time. As the mansion lights dimmed that night, Hannah stood outside Madame Kang's door, listening to the shallow rhythm of her breathing. She pressed her hand against the wood and whispered, "I won't let this end like this." She didn't know how yet. Only that from this moment on, silence was no longer an option. The first real crack appeared 3 days before the engagement party. It came quietly. Hannah noticed it when Seorin stopped pretending. Until now, everything had been wrapped in elegance, soft smiles, medical excuses, gentle lies. But that morning, Seorin's patience thinned. The mask slipped just enough for Hannah to see what lived underneath. Madame Kang refused her medication. "I don't need it," the old woman said, her voice weak but steady. "It makes me forget." Seorin laughed softly. "It helps you rest." "I remember everything," Madame Kang whispered. "Even the things you wish I wouldn't." The room went still. Seorin dismissed the staff with a flick of her hand. Hannah lingered at the doorway a second too long. Seorin noticed. Her eyes locked onto Hannah's. "Leave," she said. Hannah stepped out, but she didn't go far. She stood just beyond the door, heart pounding, every sense sharpened. Inside, Seorin's voice dropped. "You should be grateful," she said. "Your son would fall apart without me." Madame Kang replied, slow and deliberate. "He would survive you." A sharp sound followed. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just final. When Hannah rushed back in moments later, Madame Kang sat frozen, her cheek burning red. Seorin stood over her, composed again. "She's agitated," Seorin said calmly. "Call the doctor." Minute J arrived minutes later, breathless, concern etched across his face. "What happened?" he asked. Seorin touched his arm. "She accused me of things she imagined." Madame Kang looked up at her son. For a moment, clarity cut through the fog. "She hit me," she said. The room seemed to tilt. Minute J stared at his mother, then at Seorin. Confusion twisted into frustration. "Mother," he said carefully, "you've been confused before." Seorin's eyes glistened. "I would never." The moment passed. The truth slipped away again. Hannah felt something snap inside her. That night, she didn't just document. She acted. She followed Seorin. Past the lit corridors. Down the private stairwell. Into the lower wing where records were stored. Medical files, security logs, archived footage. Hannah waited until Seorin disappeared into her suite before slipping inside. Her hands shook as she searched. Then she found it. A deleted camera feed. Recovered fragments. 11 minutes of darkness, restored. The footage was grainy. Silent. But unmistakable. Seorin entered Madame Kang's room. Seorin closed the door. Seorin raised her hand. Hannah's breath caught painfully in her chest. She copied everything. Saved it. Backed it up. And for the first time, hope flickered. But Seorin was already ahead of her. The next morning, Hannah was summoned. Not to the sitting room. To the security office. 2 guards stood beside Seorin. Her expression was calm, almost bored. "You've been somewhere you shouldn't," Seorin said. Hannah's heart slammed against her ribs. "I don't know what you mean," she replied. Seorin smiled faintly. "Check her locker." They did. They found nothing. Hannah had moved the evidence. Seorin's eyes narrowed. "You're braver than you look," she said softly. "That's a mistake." That afternoon, Madame Kang was transferred. Not to a hospital. To a private care facility outside the city. No visitors. No questions. Minute J signed the papers without reading them. "I'm doing this for her safety," Seorin said. Hannah watched the car disappear through the gates. Panic set in. If Madame Kang vanished now, the truth would vanish with her. That night, Hannah broke every rule. She went to Minute J. Not as a maid. As a witness. "I know you don't trust me," she said, standing in his office, voice trembling but clear. "But your mother is in danger." Minute J's face hardened. "This again?" "I have proof." She hesitated. Then said the words that could destroy her. "I saw your fiancé hit her." Silence swallowed the room. Minute J stood slowly. "Get out." Hannah didn't move. "She's controlling the narrative," Hannah continued. "The cameras. The doctors. The medication." Minute J's jaw clenched. "If you ever accuse her again." "She's trying to erase your mother," Hannah said. "Before the wedding." That did it. Minute J called security. As Hannah was escorted out, she caught one last glimpse of his face. Not anger. Doubt. Small. But alive. Later that night, Seorin stood in Hannah's path. "You could have lived quietly," she said. "Now you'll disappear." Hannah met her gaze. "You're afraid," Hannah said. Seorin smiled. "Of a maid?" "No," Hannah replied. "Of the truth reaching him." Seorin stepped closer. "You have no idea what you've started." Hannah swallowed. "I do," she said. "And I'm not stopping." As the engagement party lights began to rise across the city, alliances shifted silently. Seorin tightened her grip. Minute J began to watch. And Hannah, alone, exposed, and terrified, held the only key that could burn everything down. The game had changed. And there was no turning back. The engagement party arrived wrapped in light and music, a celebration designed to erase doubt. Crystal chandeliers spilled gold across the ballroom. Strings hummed softly. Laughter floated like smoke. To anyone watching, it was a perfect night, power, wealth, love on display. But beneath the silken smiles, everything was coming apart. Minute J stood beside Seorin, accepting congratulations he barely heard. His eyes moved constantly. Not toward the guests. Toward the exits. Toward the staff. Toward the spaces where truth liked to hide. Since Hannah's accusation, sleep had abandoned him. He had replayed his mother's face in his mind. The moment she said, "She hit me." The way Seorin answered too quickly. The way the doctors spoke in rehearsed phrases. The way the transfer papers appeared without warning. He had told himself it was stress. But doubt had roots now. Across the room, Hannah moved silently between tables, dressed in black, invisible by design. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared someone might hear it. She had not been fired. Seorin wanted her close. Watched. Contained. Hannah felt it every time Seorin's gaze brushed over her like a blade. In her pocket, the drive burned like a secret heartbeat. The footage. The backups. The proof. All useless if she couldn't get Minute J alone. Then she saw it. Madame Kang's chair. Empty. It sat at the family table, polished and ceremonial, a symbol without substance. Minute J noticed it too. "Where is my mother?" he asked quietly. Seorin didn't miss a beat. "She's resting. Crowds overwhelm her." Minute J nodded. But his jaw tightened. Later, when the speeches began, Seorin took the microphone. Her voice was calm. Controlled. Perfect. I'm grateful, she said, for the family that welcomed me. For the woman who raised the man I love. Applause followed. Hannah watched Minute J's face as Serin smiled toward the empty chair. Something inside him hardened. Then it happened. A sound. A crash. Gasps rippled through the room as a waiter dropped a tray near the stage. Glass shattered. Music stopped. Heads turned. For 3 seconds, chaos bloomed. And in those 3 seconds, Hannah moved. She stepped onto the stage. Straight into the light. Serin froze. What is this? Someone whispered. Hannah didn't look at the crowd. She looked at Minute J. I'm sorry, she said, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. But I can't stay silent anymore. Security shifted. Serin's smile faltered. Remove her. Minute J raised a hand. Wait. The room stilled. Hannah reached into her pocket and placed the drive on the podium. She's been hurting your mother, Hannah said. And hiding it. Serin laughed, sharp and bright. This is absurd. Hannah pressed a button. The screen behind them flickered to life. Grainy footage filled the ballroom. A bedroom. A familiar figure. Serin, unmistakable. The moment played out in silence. The raised hand. The strike. The stillness afterward. A collective breath was held, and then released in shock. Serin stepped back. This is edited, she said. She's lying. Minute J didn't speak. He couldn't. The footage continued. Another clip. Medication altered. Records changed. Orders given. The truth, piece by piece. Serin turned toward Minute J. Listen to me, she said urgently. This is a setup. You know me. Minute J looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Where is my mother? He asked. Serin hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. Enough. Minute J turned to security. Bring her back. Now. Serin grabbed his arm. You're ruining everything. Minute J shook her off. No, he said quietly. You did. The room erupted. Phones came out. Whispers multiplied. Authority figures moved in. Serin's composure cracked completely. She was weak, she shouted. She would have destroyed us. Minute J stared at her, eyes burning. She was my mother. Security closed in. Serin's gaze flicked to Hannah, pure hatred. You think you won, she hissed. Hannah didn't answer. Minutes later, the ballroom emptied in fragments of disbelief. Minute J stood alone on the stage. Hannah approached slowly. I'm sorry, she said. I should have done it sooner. Minute J closed his eyes. No, he said. You saved her. Outside, sirens cut through the night. And somewhere beyond the city lights, Madame Kang was finally on her way home. But the damage, the betrayal, the cost of silence, would take much longer to heal. And for Minute J, the most dangerous enemy he had ever faced was not a rival. It was the woman he almost married. The hospital corridor smelled like antiseptic and rain. Minute J stood outside the private room long after the doctors finished speaking. Long after the nurses stopped hovering. Long after the world resumed its rhythm around him. Inside that room was the woman who had raised him. And for the first time since childhood, he was afraid to go in. He had faced gunmen without blinking. Negotiated with enemies who would gladly kill him. Buried friends and rivals alike. But this was different. Hannah stood a few steps back, hands folded tightly in front of her. She had not followed him in. She knew this moment didn't belong to her. Not yet. The door opened slowly. Minute J stepped inside. Madame Kang lay propped against white pillows, thinner than he remembered, skin pale but eyes clear. Clear in a way they hadn't been for months. When she saw him, she smiled. A small smile. Tired. But real. You look older, she said softly. His chest cracked open. He crossed the room in 2 steps and knelt beside her bed, gripping her hand like it might disappear if he loosened his hold. I'm sorry, he said. The words came out rough. Broken. I didn't see it. I didn't listen. Madame Kang studied him for a long moment. Then she squeezed his hand. You were in love, she said. That makes men blind. Tears blurred his vision. She hurt you, he whispered. Yes, she said simply. But what hurts more is knowing you thought I was losing my mind. Minute J bowed his head. The silence stretched. Outside the room, Hannah listened to nothing and everything at once. She stared at the floor, replaying every moment that had led here, every risk, every near miss, every second she almost gave up. A nurse passed by and paused. She's asking for you, the nurse said gently. Hannah froze. For me? The nurse nodded. Hannah hesitated at the doorway. Minute J looked up as she entered, eyes red, face stripped of all authority. In that moment, he wasn't a boss. He wasn't powerful. He was just a son who almost lost his mother. Madame Kang turned her gaze to Hannah. This is the girl, she said. Hannah stepped forward slowly. Yes, Madame Kang reached for her hand. You saved my life, she said. Hannah swallowed hard. I just did what was right. Madame Kang smiled faintly. Most people don't. Minute J watched the exchange like it was rewriting something inside him. After that night, everything moved fast. Seorin was arrested quietly, no spectacle, no mercy. Charges stacked quickly. Abuse. Fraud. Coercion. Manipulation of medical records. The woman who once glided through rooms on admiration now sat alone under fluorescent lights, stripped of protection. She didn't ask for Minute J. She knew better. The engagement ring was returned without a note. The wedding invitations were burned. And the empire, the one Minute J had built with ruthless precision, shifted direction. He cancelled meetings, delayed deals, cut ties with partners who had not noticed the signs. Power no longer impressed him. Silence did. Trust did. Truth did. Hannah expected to be dismissed once everything settled. That was the rule. People like her were useful until they weren't. So when Minute J asked to see her again, she assumed it was to thank her, and let her go. She stood in his office, hands folded, posture respectful. I'll pack my things, she said quietly. I know I crossed lines. Minute J looked at her for a long moment. You crossed them for the right reason, he said. She didn't respond. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. She obeyed. I've spent my life surrounded by people who tell me what I want to hear, he continued. And I almost lost the only person who never lied to me. He paused. You didn't protect my mother because it benefited you, he said. You did it because you couldn't live with yourself if you didn't. Hannah nodded. Yes. I need people like that near me, he said. Her breath caught. I want you to stay. Not as a maid. Not as staff. As something else. Trust. Hannah didn't smile. She cried. Days turned into weeks. Madame Kang recovered slowly, but fully. She moved back into the house, this time with doors open, staff rotated, transparency enforced. She insisted Hannah sit with her during tea. You remind me of myself, Madame Kang said once. Before I learned how dangerous silence could be. Minute J watched them from a distance, something warm and unfamiliar settling in his chest. What he felt for Hannah wasn't sudden. It wasn't dramatic. It was steady. Built on moments. On respect. On truth spoken even when it was inconvenient. One evening, as rain tapped softly against the windows, he found her in the garden, staring at the city lights. You changed everything, he said. Hannah shook her head. I just refused to look away. He stepped closer. I don't want a life built on fear anymore, he said. I don't want a woman beside me who sees kindness as weakness. She turned to him then. And what do you want? He met her eyes. Someone who would stand alone in a room full of powerful people and tell the truth anyway. The silence between them wasn't tense. It was calm. Earned. And for the first time in a very long life, Minute J didn't feel the need to control what came next. He let it unfold. Slowly. Honestly. Together. The storm had passed. But what remained was stronger than anything he had ever built with force. The house felt different after everything ended. Quieter, but not empty. Morning light poured through the tall windows where tension once lived. The kind of light that doesn't ask permission. The kind that reveals everything. Madame Kang sat near the window with a shawl around her shoulders, a cup of tea warming her hands. She moved slower now, but her eyes were sharp again. Present. Grounded. Alive. Hannah stood nearby, arranging flowers on the table. Not because it was her duty, because she wanted the room to feel gentle. Minute J watched them from the doorway. This was the life he almost lost. For the first time, the house no longer felt like a fortress. There were no guards pacing the halls. No whispers behind closed doors. No schedules designed to control every second. Just quiet. And truth. Minute J stepped inside. Madame Kang looked up and smiled. "You're late." He returned the smile. "I was learning how to be." She laughed softly. Hannah turned toward him. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, unspoken, understood. Later that day, Minute J made decisions that would echo far beyond the walls of the house. He dismantled systems that thrived on fear. Replaced loyalty tests with accountability. Power no longer flowed through secrecy, it flowed through transparency. Some people walked away. Others stayed. The ones who stayed mattered. Hannah didn't move into a new role overnight. She didn't want shortcuts or favors. Minute J respected that. "You don't owe me," she told him once. "And I won't be owned." He nodded. "I know." That was the difference. Evenings became simple. Shared meals. Conversations without agendas. Laughter that didn't feel rehearsed. Madame Kang watched them carefully. One night, as the three of them sat together, she said, "Love isn't loud. It doesn't need to prove itself." Minute J looked at Hannah. She didn't look away. Weeks later, Minute J stood before a mirror adjusting a suit, not for a ceremony, not for an announcement. Just a dinner. He caught Hannah's reflection behind him. "You don't have to change who you are for this world," he said. "I already know who you are." She smiled. "Good. Because I won't." The city moved outside, unaware that an empire had shifted not through violence, but through truth. Seorin faded into memory. Not as a villain in headlines, but as a lesson written into the bones of the family. Silence protects cruelty. Courage exposes it. And sometimes, the person who saves everything isn't the one with power, but the one who refuses to look away. The story didn't end with punishment. It ended with choice. Minute J chose to listen. Hannah chose to stand. Madame Kang chose to forgive. And in a world built on fear, they chose something rarer. A future built on honesty. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning.